everyone. My name is LeTonia Jones, and I am so excited to be with you today in conversation with Nikki Myers. I work at Embodied Philosophy, and I am the members editor, so you may receive emails from me from time to time offering some encouragement and what we call nurturing at Embodied Philosophy. And so this time I'm coming to you in a different format. As I mentioned before, I am interviewing and just quite frankly, getting the opportunity to sit and talk with Nikki Myers today. Nikki Myers has a workshop that is coming up on July the 8th and the 9th from 1 p.m. Eastern until 4 p.m. Eastern. And what she will be covering is related to addiction. And so the workshop is called Healing Addiction, a Yogic Perspective. And so we are so excited to be bringing the topic to our wisdom school and sharing this with our students. I will say a little bit about Nikki, and then I'm going to let Nikki introduce herself more formally. And then we'll get right into our conversation. Nikki, I just want to thank you off the top for joining me today. I really am excited to get the opportunity to chat with you.
I'm delighted to be here.
So Nikki Myers is an accomplished speaker, teacher with an MBA, an ERYT 500. She's a yoga therapist, a somatic experiencing practitioner, and an addictions recovery specialist. And as I've been doing the research that I've been doing, I'm just blown away by the ways that Nikki uses her life. And so I'm not going to say much more in introduction because I would like for her to settle into this conversation in the way that she has done so many times in other interviews and other spaces. So Nikki, if you want to tell our audience more about you, more than welcome.
Absolutely will. And first, I want to really thank Embodied Philosophy. It's been a joy so far. This is my first course with Embodied Philosophy, and it's been an absolute joy to work with all the organization that I've worked with so far. And I'm really, really looking forward to this coursework around healing addiction. So I'm going to introduce myself the way that I introduce myself, really in wherever I am. For the most part, wherever I am, I use the same introduction. And, that's if I actually spoke at one point at Harvard Medical School, and I introduced myself that way. Or, if I'm in an informal format at a 12-step meeting in a church basement, I introduce myself the same way, no matter what the format is. And, it starts with, I'm Nikki, right? And I am, and all the things you said, an MBA, I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is a particular trauma healing methodology that was developed by Dr. Peter Levine, right? I am a yoga therapist. I am the founder of Y12, we now call it, and the primary program in that is Y12SR, which is the yoga of 12-step recovery, right? I am all of those things, right? And been working in this field for decades and decades. I don't even know how many years anymore. And so all of those things, and I always say the big three-letter word is and. Right? The big three-letter word is and. And I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a codependent, I'm the survivor of both childhood and adult sexual trauma. I'm a love addict, and I'm the mother of 2 living and 1 deceased child. I'm the grandmother of 5. I'm the actual great-grandmother of 7. yeah. 7 great-grandchildren. Right. And, I'm a spiritual seeker. I am a lover of life. I'm a lover of all things dogs, right? I love dogs, right? And I love saying all that in the same sentence, right? And that's just an example, because there are plenty of other ands that I could put in that introduction. And that's just a subset of the ands that I am. And I love doing all that in the same sentence. Part of this healing for me in this healing addiction, the work comes from this place of lived experience in the world of addiction. And part of this healing for me has been in reintegrating all the parts, right? I always love to say, when I discovered that when I make one part of myself bad, awful, and wrong, and another part of myself right and wonderful and praiseworthy, what happens is there's a split that's created, and there's this internal war that goes on. This is some work that really has been popularized and has seen a resurgence lately. It's generally labeled parts work, right? And this piece of reintegrating all these parts. In its current form, it's been really resurgent in the work of Richard Schwartz, right? And his work, he's called IFS, which is Internal Family Systems. But parts work is actually really, really old. It's actually ancient, right? And I tell people within that, when we talk about, I learned it and really got a sense of it from the study of yoga and Vedanta, right? And if you just think about it, right, I learned that the Divine Mother has 1,000 names, right? And some of those names are quite fierce. Some of them are quite strong. They're not all sunshine and lollipops and, all of those kinds of things. Some of them are quite strong, right? And all of them are the Divine Mother. So part of this work, I know for me, has been integrating all of these parts in such a way that there's a respect and an honor and a reverence for all of them, recognizing that all of them in some way have been really primary for me to survive in this plane of existence, and to bring them all in, right? To bring them all in such a way. I usually talk about this. It seems the older I get, that my favorite movies are like Pixar cartoons, right? And the one that comes to mind, as I always talk about this, is the cartoon Inside Out, right? Yes. And this is exactly what I'm speaking to bring them all in, right? To bring them all and to honor them all. And then with that work, with that metabolizing and integrating and digesting work of all of this, what I get to recognize is that while all of them are a part of me, truth is, none of them define me. None of them define me. But it can't happen in the realization that none of them define me. That transformation can't happen until there's this integration of all the parts, and there's this honoring of all the parts. And this has been such a big part of my healing. I always love to start things out with that level of integration and introduction. I think it often gives a lens into, I use my pronouns are she, her, and we, right? And that introduction gives a lens into that we, right? There's a we inside of me. There's a we inside of me. And the idea is, how do I bring them all in? How do I honor all the we's inside of me? And this lens informs all the work that I do. So I think it's an appropriate way to introduce myself.
I love that. And especially in a world where we are so disembodied, we are not operating as one entity. We are often, depending upon our social locations, the color of our skin, we are wearing masks. A lot of the times we're code switching in the ways that we might speak in one environment. And it's counterintuitive to our regulatory system.
Exactly.
We can't operate that way. And what I love about what you're saying is that we don't have to hate any of those parts, and when I acknowledge all of them and I can love all of them, then I can show up in a forgiving way. All of
Exactly.
it makes for my experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And until I do, something's going to come out sideways, right? Something is going to come out sideways, right? And so the work is in for me has been in the integration and honoring of all the parts, that they're all worthy, that they're all, have voice, and that we can really build a community. All of them, I always say, is team Nikki. They always have been. They're all team Nikki. And so to honor each one and their gifts and their voice has been primary in moving toward healing for me.
I'm just sitting here thinking about just my own healing journey. And one of the things that I can get twisted and believe is that there's actually something wrong. And you're reminding me that there's nothing wrong here. Nothing wrong here. I am so excited for
That's
our
right.
students.
That's right.
Just off the top of you introducing yourself, I'm excited for our students. I hope that I can be in the workshop on the 8th and 9th. I have no doubt that there's so much knowledge for us to integrate that you
I
will
would
be offering.
love to have you there. I would love to have you there. And that view, is not just mine. It actually comes from Sankhya, right? That comes from Sankhya yoga, right? Which starts out with this whole thing. One of the things that I usually at some point in the work do is show a picture of my great granddaughter Peyton at two hours old, right? And it's this beautiful picture where I'm holding this beautiful being at 2 hours old. And I'm looking in her eyes and I'm going, this is wholeness, right? We talk about wholeness and you can see it, this beautiful being's eyes. This is wholeness, right? Now, at this point, she's a little piece of wholeness that has come from wholeness, right? At this point, she can't tell nose from toe. It's indistinguishable. She can't tell nose from toes. She certainly doesn't know boy, girl, or black, white, or any of those kinds of concepts that get layered on in programming later, right? Your left brain doesn't even start to come online until you're about 7 months, 7 months old, right? So she's still in this world of no space, no time, all of that. And I'm looking at her and I'm going, this is wholeness. This is wholeness, right? And so we are all, there's nothing broken, right? There's nothing to fix, right? We've just had all this programming dumped on top of our wholeness that we've forgotten who it is that we are, right? And so I always talk in the workshop, that means that the job is subtraction. And that's a beautiful way for me to think about it. There's nothing to add. There's nothing to seek. The job is chipping away, right? And all that is not us. And that gives me, that's a real spark of hope for me.
Before Michelle Obama wrote her book, Unbecoming, I'm a writer as well. And so I'm always tossing around different titles. And one of the titles that I had for a work I thought I was going to do until First Lady Obama used my title was Behavior Unbecoming. Is that unbecoming of everything I've been told and all the things that are actually not me, but have been layered.
Exactly.
So I love that is at the heart of the work and the heart of what you'll be doing, for our students, and of course what you do in the world, really. I was thinking about talking to you and just wondering, with all of the all of the things that you've done, all the things you've studied, all the things that we named in the bio and you repeated, um, which came first for you? Was it the yoga as part of your recovery or recovery into yoga, expanding your
Yeah,
experience of
yeah,
healing
yeah.
addiction?
It's really it's been an interesting journey. It really has, because I was actually introduced to yoga in the 70s, right? And I knew that there was something there. I knew that there was something there. However, I was very distracted by drinking and drugging and bling and and all of those things. But I knew that there was something, there was a seed, I'll
Mhm,
say, that was that, at least threw enough nutrient on it that I knew that there was something there.
mhm,
Um uh but how that said, I came into 12-step program after, all the things that, I talked about in that introduction, and some I didn't, right? I
mhm,
came into the 12-step program in 1987, right? And when I walked into those rooms, the term that's often used in 12 steps is spiritually bankrupt.
mhm,
So not only was I spiritually bankrupt, I was pretty hard hit by being in the streets.
mhm,
Part that I didn't talk about that, I freely talk about in doing the work. One of the other experiences for me while in the throes of addiction was in commercial sex work. So at one point, I was actually a commercial sex worker. And
mhm,
so by the time I walked into the rooms, I was pretty well beat down, to say it that way, right? I lived a pretty hard life. Let's put it that way, right?
mhm, mhm,
And when I walked into the rooms, I did find people who loved me till I could learn how to love myself. And I'm
mhm,
so grateful for that.
mhm,
So the first 8 years of recovery, right? A lot of things happened, but part of what happened within those 8 years is I went back to school and I got the car back and the house back and the kids back, because my kids had actually been separated from
mhm,
me.
mhm,
And I got the car back and the house back and the kids back and all the stuff. Ended up with a couple of degrees and, and all the story, all the things back. And then after 8 years, and it really is an incredible story around this, but I'm going to shorten it for this interview. After that first 8 years, I ended up in relapse,
mhm,
right? And I relapsed in, actually, it happened in Germany, right? And it was so funny with that relapse. I relapsed on a substance that really wasn't even my substance of choice.
mhm,
And then I found my way to Amsterdam in the midst of that relapse and found my substance of choice
mhm,
in Amsterdam. And
mhm,
so I stayed out for a while and then finally ended up calling for help,
mhm,
and finally made it back to the United States, where I came back into 12-step programs after the relapse. And it was after that first relapse that I was reunited with yoga. I
mhm,
found my first yoga experience was hot yoga, was Bikram, right?
mhm,
And then I found Ashtanga and I fell in love with Ashtanga yoga, right? I fell in love with Ashtanga yoga. And so again, long story short, I had 4 years within, after that 8 year period of recovery and then relapse. Once I came back in, I had another 4 years clean. And within that 4 years, this is when I found yoga. And
mhm,
I made a decision after beginning a deep study of yoga that I didn't need 12-step anymore, right? I'm like, this is the answer. All the answers are here. I don't need to go back in those rooms and hear that same shit over and over and over and over again, right? And so after after that 4-year period, I relapsed again. And it was after that second relapse that I recognized that these two things needed to be deeply coupled, that there needed to be a coupleship with the cognitive and the somatic work, right? I'm getting this cognitive work from 12 steps. The somatic work that I do in yoga needs to be married. They need to be deeply, at least for someone like me, right? And then after that, that was when Y12SR was born, after that second relapse. And then I discovered in the course of that there were a whole lot of people just like me that needed that sense of coupleship between those things, that was supportive for sustainable recovery for them, right? As well as for me. And I'm really, really grateful to say that it's been now 22 years. If I make it to July 15th, it'll be 23 years since that last relapse. And this piece for me has been a big piece of the missing in order to have a sustainable platform for recovery for me, one day at a time, a sustainable platform for recovery for me.
That is an amazing story of your journey, and the fact that a relapse does not mean that it's over.
Right.
You know, as long as you can come back, and and the fact that you can learn things along the way that are going to be the thing that helps you bring it all together. As we were talking just in the beginning, we need all those parts.
All of those parts.
All those parts coming together.
That's right.
In my own life, I'm in recovery as well. And in the recovery spaces that I'm in, I noticed that people shy away from the word healing, like that we would be healed from whatever the addiction is. So the first word of your workshop title is healing addiction. Yeah. And so I wonder for you, and maybe you answered it in what you just described around your journey, but do you think that it is about healing from addiction, or do you find that it's like the word you used, sustaining recovery? What are your views on that?
I actually love that question a lot. And I'm gonna answer it from my perspective or the teachings that I've received from the Yoga Sutras, right? And it's part of this integration work for me. And this one in particular comes from Yoga Sutra 119. Right. And Yoga Sutra 119 talks about two kinds of yogis, right? And one is, for lack of an English word, one is like the extraordinary yogi, right? It's probably one who's come back into this plane of existence after maybe many lifetimes and all of those kinds of things. I think of this kind of yogi like Jesus and Buddha. And, that's an extraordinary yogi, right? And so maybe that level of yogi, maybe there is an ED that you can put on the end of healed or cured or any of that. Maybe you can do that for that. The other kind of yogi that Yoga Sutra speaks of is called the ordinary yogi, And the ordinary yogi for me is the yogi that has to do the work, right? That I got to keep this nurturing, this cultivating, all this work in order to sustain recovery on a daily basis for me. And the deal is I've done this before in my relapse. In my first relapse, it was kind of like, I've been doing this for 8 years. I got this. I don't have to worry about it, any of that kind of stuff. And I ended up in relapse. I ended up right back. I mean, so quickly, it's even hard to verbalize how quickly I ended up back in that same samskara. It's a pattern. It's a habit. And maybe for the extraordinary yogi, the samskara goes away. But I'm determined that I'm not going to bullshit myself to think that I'm that a Jesus or a Buddha or extraordinary yogi. So for me, there's an ing on that healing, right? It means that this is something that each day I'm in the process of discovering, what more this healing has to offer me. And that has been a beautiful, beautiful inquiry for me, right? I can say this, that the 12 steps have been my lifeboat. And, and in our work, it's even beyond the 12 steps, right? We incorporate harm reduction in our work. We incorporate cognitive behavioral therapy work in this work. So all of these things have been a part of a lifeboat for me. And yoga has been a launching pad. Adding this other piece to it, it's taken my recovery to a place that, and continues to take my recovery to a place that I didn't even know was possible. I didn't even know in any way existed. And that's an ongoing thing. So I refrain. Now I know a whole nother set of folks that will put the ED on their cured or recovered or healed or any of those kinds of things. I know that, and if that's what works for you, I'm all for it, right? If that's what works for you, I'm all for it. I just know that doesn't work for me. And I know that there are many, it takes me out of this curiosity for what recovery, what this can bring me next, right? What it can offer next. Where is this next place? And so that's kind of my view into it. And I've been asked that question many times before. It's like there are folks that, I think the words are, there's I guess a charge or a feeling or something when I say addict, or when they say there's a judgment that is bad, right? So we're in the binary. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is it. And my healing around that is that anytime that there's a charge about it, right, that I feel this sense of charge about it, that's an indication to me that there's some other work that I need to do around whatever that is. If I get a charge around saying I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a codependent, there's another level of work. I need to dig a little deeper. There's another level of work. But those are experiences that for me are as neutral as saying I own a Toyota, right? Right? And the Yoga Sutras talk about that, right? That when it becomes, when you're done with the work, because there's no longer a charge associated with it. There's no longer this self. You can talk about it in a way that there's not this charge. So it's a really interesting question. And I love staying in the inquiry around what healing is for me today, and what healing is for me today, and where is this healing going to take me today? And when I put the ED on it, I come out of that inquiry, right?
Yeah, I've said, I've had enough. I'm going to go do something else. I've got enough healed. I'm healed for a lifetime. And I find that to be A
I
tree.
tried that.
That's a setup.
Yeah, it was kind of a setup for me, right? Right. I always think of the quote I learned from Malcolm X, right? And the quote is, once you think you got it, you lost it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
love that quote. And I remember it all the time. Once you think you got it, you lost it, right? And so,
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you are speaking, directly to my heart right now. You mentioned that. So when you said that we do harm reduction, you're talking about Y12SR. And when I looked on to the site to kind of see what the work was, I was just blown away. Not only is it around harm reduction, but you're using yoga around anti-racism work, taking it into marginalized communities. And I would assume that inside of a marginalized community, yoga meets people at all of the intersections, or however we define marginalized, what it means to be. And so there's just this broadening of the work that I could see from just the descriptions that were there.
yeah.
When you are moving into communities, that is it always tied with recovery as well, when you're talking about harm reduction, when you're talking about anti-racism, so are these the people who are coming, are they ones in recovery who are now utilizing this maybe in addition to their 12 steps?
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing. It really is. And you know, the idea of part of this and tying this with yoga is that I would assert that in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali is actually saying this, right? Right. That we're all pretty much addicted to the way we process our reality.
Mhm.
Right? We all see.
Mhm.
And when I think and really apply this lens of the 12 steps and the Yoga Sutras to a bigger definition of addiction, then there are ways to even begin to use these things toward healing some of the systemic issues, right?
Mhm.
Like racism. Truth is, there are 200 different kinds of 12-step programs.
Mhm.
And there is actually a racist anonymous. There really is. Yes, there really is.
Well, yeah, I did
And
not know.
the idea of using 12-step principles,
Yeah.
right, in order to approach even this systemic issue
Mhm.
of racism, that excites me. That
Mhm.
really excites me. So it's a realm that we're moving into. I often say that for many, the 12 steps is I've seen in that they're misunderstood
Mhm.
in certain ways. It's like the first 6 steps begin to are about healing at the level of the individual and the personal.
Mhm.
But once you get to the 7th step and beyond,
Mhm.
right? That's a different thing. The I has to turn into a we, right?
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
it doesn't, we end up drying up like a grape on the on a vine, right? We end up drying up, right? Seriously, that it
Mhm.
has to turn into a we. And when it does, we need to approach this from addiction from a bigger perspective,
Mhm.
right? And that perspective is pretty much outlined again in the Yoga Sutras, right? The idea that being that, examining our conditioning is our ticket to freedom,
Mhm.
right? And we all get deeply conditioned, right? And this whole idea again of chipping away at all that conditioning, right?
Mhm.
All of that are patterns, they're habits, there's some scars, they're vasanas, they're
Mhm.
all those things, right?
Mhm.
And that chipping away at all of those is what leads us back, both individually and collectively,
Mhm.
right? into who it is that we really are. So we combine these things. Why 12 SR meetings, everyone's in the room at the same time, right? It doesn't matter. It's a universal meeting. It doesn't matter, right? So we have, I always say AANAOA SLA EIEIO, right? And when in doing that, you get to this point of recognition that, you know, the substance or the behavior, the manifestation of the addiction, there's a root, that there's a common root underneath whatever that manifestation is. And the idea is to get at the healing of that, right? Of whatever that manifestation, regardless of the manifestation. Yeah.
That's you know, I know that in the room that I'm in, it says that the substance is but a symptom.
But a symptom.
It is but a symptom. And I wanted to actually ask you that because in the way that you've offered up a definition for addiction, you say it's the dis-ease of the lost self.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that what you are saying is at the heart of addiction?
Mm-hmm.
That is that
we
what
lose ourselves? We've had, back to the Sankhya, so much of this programming dumped on top of that little pure essence of who we are. There's so much of this programming that's been dumped on top of it. We don't know, we've been covered, you know, and we don't know who we are anymore, right? We've lost ourselves. And you know it, because anytime I look outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside, right? I can be in particularly a codependent kind of relationship with whatever that is, right? I always say jokingly, but not so jokingly. I've been in a codependent relationship with Nordstrom's, right? I'm really, right? If I just get that bag, right? Or that person, or that degree, or that house, or that workshop, or that, then that's it's gonna complete me, right? And it'll never work. I'm looking outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside.
And I think that viewing it from this perspective, the perspective that you're articulating right now, that I am receiving and understanding, this has the power to remove the stigma of who we say is an addict and who's not. That's why the beauty of the space of that room, everybody is there, because we can't live here in the West. We can't live here in this capitalistic society and not say it's almost a requirement. Like you got to do something. We've just decided that there are some that are worse than others, when really, you know, what you're reminding
all
me
of us.
And anytime I'm trying to get something from the outside, it's never going to be successful. You know, part of that, you know, question, what I had written was, how do you talk to people who care about us as, you know, addicts, alcoholics, wherever, you know, we find ourselves, in order for them to understand rather than demonize? I don't even necessarily need to ask you that.
Exactly.
Because it's simply look at, well, sweetie, look in the mirror. You know, what are you dealing with? What is the thing that's calling you?
And you cannot, and the beauty and the compassion and the grace of this for me is that, you know, you can't come into this plane of existence and not get that programming, and not to make that bad, awful, and wrong, right? Now, I don't want to set a binary with that too. Some of this stuff we need in order to, you know, just move and be in the plane of existence that we're in. And we still have to recognize that it's still programming, right? Whether it's useful now, and that it's temporal. It changes with time.
Mhm.
What was very useful at one point in time in my life is no longer useful at this
Mhm.
point in time. My problem is I get attached to it, right? And that's
Exactly.
what the Yoga Sutras talk about,
Yeah.
right? Issue is I get attached,
Mhm.
right? And so, and you know, it really is a beautiful what the stigma thing that you were just speaking to. It really is beautiful to be able to recognize and let go and recognize that this is all of us,
Mhm.
right? It's actually, if you look at the Om symbol, it's kind of represented there, right? You got the three loops, which are the states of consciousness. And then you got that little horseshoe kind of thing that separates us. That's the Maya,
Mhm.
right? It's the veil of illusion. And I
Mhm.
always love that because the founders of the 12-step program say the root of the problem is our delusion of control.
Mhm.
It's the
Mhm.
delusion of control,
Mhm.
right? And that thing kind of represents this network of programming, this network of samskaras. I call it the matrix. We're in the binary matrix,
Mhm.
right? And above that is this representation of
Mhm.
our true self, of who it is that we really are, right?
Mhm.
And there's this thing that covers it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it really, really is it's all of us,
Mhm.
right? It is all of us. And that's what the freedom of this thing represents. It represents freedom from all addiction, even our addiction to the way we process our reality.
Mhm. Oh, this is amazing. I have been in and out of yoga studios. Hot yoga was my first experience with it.
Yours too.
And then I dip out this last year. I'd been saying that I wanted to return or actually learn. I work at Embodied Philosophy where we have a whole yoga philosophy side of our school. And I've been more comfortable in the mind body studies, but I still haven't practiced yoga since I've been at Embodied Philosophy. But I feel a calling toward that. So that's another reason why it was really amazing to have the experience of being able to talk to you today. I heard last night, we've already talked about the miracle of yesterday. So I
Yes,
joined you, and I had to drop off before it was time to actually start doing some
the
of the
practice,
yoga
right?
practice. So, but what I'm able to hear right now is there is the teaching from the sutras that help to get the mind to understand this dis-ease of the lost self in a different way, remove some stigma, and then we go into the body
Mhm.
with the poses. And I think I heard you say yesterday that when you find that you're having trouble holding a position, that's actually where you're getting the most release.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what is it that is released for a person who is in recovery and the arms get to shaking, and because that's to be honest with you, that's why I haven't been back, because I don't really like to shake.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
twist, ouch, ouch.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thanks for asking that question. Yeah. And that's the integration of this trauma informed work and trauma. That's where I put the work from the teachings of Dr. Levine in the practices that we do on the mat. And from my teacher, one of my teachers, I learned the style of yoga that I was taught in is called Vini yoga,
Mhm.
right? And so, and it's a really specific style of yoga that more tends toward therapy, right?
Mhm.
And working deeply with that. And then coupling that with this trauma release work that I learned from Dr. Levine and integrating those into the practices. So what you were speaking to, we call repetition and stay. That's the way it was framed for me. And repetition is when we repeat the form of the posture. And I always usually use the example when you go to a gym and you want to build a bicep, they're going to tell you to repeat the curl. You do repetitions of the bicep curl, for example. Stay is, you know, and I'm looking there to work with the neuromuscular patterning, right? And when you work with stay or the hold, you're working with a different set of patterns. It's the psychological patterning, right? It's the physiological more. So we're going at a deeper level of patterning, and that's the stay. And I always love the quote is from BKS Iyengar, right? It says your yoga really starts when you want to get out of the posture, right? Oh. That's when your yoga really starts.
Mine right? Started a long time ago. I need to go back.
I love it. I love it. And that's because it's at that moment that what I really want to do, right, is exercise the wisdom to know the difference. Right? Because sometimes my body is telling me it's time for you to get out. Right. And we always say this, listen to your breath. It's going to tell you, or listen to your body. If it's an ouch, if it's burning, biting, pinching, stabbing, any of those, get out. Get out of the posture. Right. If your breath gets jerky or jumpy, fragmented, erratic, irregular, that's your nervous system telling you maybe it's time to pause, right? Maybe it's time to just realign your mind and the breath. When the mind and the breath are aligned, I'm present. I'm in the present moment, right? When the mind and breath are not aligned, I'm someplace else. You can't breathe in the past. You can't breathe in the future, right? You can only breathe in the present moment, right? And when my mind and breath are aligned, I'm present. Right. And then once I'm present, I get access to the wisdom to know the difference. That's where I find access to the wisdom to know the difference. And that's what we're teaching on the mat, so that I can use that in my life. Right. When I'm off the mat and into my life, I can pause and in a moment, get access to the wisdom, because that's really is the other thing that we really love to teach on the mat in 112SR. Like a lot of those little phrases that you will often hear, which were so useful for me in 12 steps, like keep coming back, right? The keep coming back is really an embodiment, right? It's something that I can learn what that really feels like. It is more than just keep coming back to a meeting or doing something because someone else told you to, right? It's a way to really do that within my body, to keep coming back to center, right? We teach this thing called find the middle, right? The middle's the place between too much and not enough. The middle is, and I know what that middle is for me, right? And I can keep coming back to it, use the tools because there I get access to the wisdom to know the difference, right? And so the piece in the body has been just for me such a useful and skillful set of oftentimes we call them interventions, but that's just for lack of a better word, right? But there've been these things when I notice my nervous system is getting dysregulated, right? When I notice that I'm moving into a vein where I'm probably not going to make a skillful decision, I can use these little tools to keep coming back and to keep coming back and to keep coming back, so that I can find access to the wisdom to know the difference.
This is just, I mean, I literally am sitting here. I know that I've been interviewing with you, but my mind is literally I just feel all these bursts going off and connections being made. You remind me of what it means to be right-sized. That's what that is. When as many of us, whether we are in the rooms of recovery or not, don't know we need to be in them, but
That's
just
right.
coming out of traumatic experiences. And some, we might develop a trait that I know that's talked about with inner child work of people pleasing.
Yes,
And so
yes,
the fact that what I understand now about the importance of that hold is to know the difference between when I'm doing it for somebody else and when I can come back here and figure out, am I doing this for myself or am I getting back into that people pleasing? Or when we run into the hijacking of the nervous system around freeze, flight, fawn,
that's
you know,
right.
all of this is really coming together as a beautiful quilt for a way of living, which I was not expecting in having this conversation about yoga. Like I told you, I forgot to go back to when it got tough. I didn't go back to the mat. So now and so for a person like me, I think this is a beautiful workshop for individuals who might be considering coming and joining you on that Saturday.
I
I'm
hope
sorry,
so.
on the 8th and 9th. It feels like it has the ability to really be life shifting, whether you identify as someone who is in recovery, needs recovery, cares and loves someone who is struggling, or if you're a practitioner and you're trying to figure out how to work with people where they are in their life. Like yoga seems like a great answer. You
Exactly,
know, it seems like
exactly,
a great answer. So
exactly.
what is your as we start to wrap up, I could talk to you all day long.
I'm
Um,
sure this will continue. I
oh,
feel it. Yeah.
yes.
Uh,
But as you've, I don't know if you already have, I'm making an assumption that you have, but what is your highest intention for, because it's only 6 hours, right? It's 1 to
Yes.
4 and 1 to 4. So, and you've already shown me there's like years that could be spent
Yeah.
just understanding this. So in 6 hours, what is your highest intention for the workshop?
Yeah. Um, I always love this idea, and I think particularly for where we are in time right now is the idea of looking at addiction, right? And healing addiction as much broader than just dealing with a substance or just dealing with a behavior or any of that this has application for healing society, moving culture toward healing,
Mhm.
right? And the idea of both doing the personal and individual work toward that,
Mhm.
and that's the 3-letter word. It's not an or, it's and, right? It's the exact same work in
Mhm.
order to move toward cultural healing, in order to move toward collective healing. The work is exactly the same,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, if within that little 8-hour period, right, that we'll have together, 4 hours on one day and 4 hours the next, if that if that can be transmitted, right, in any kind of way, that makes me happy, right? Why 12 SR and why 12 as a whole
Mhm.
is a catalyst for healing addiction at all levels.
Mhm.
Individuals, families, communities, countries, right? Right, all of that, right? That this can be used as that kind of catalyst,
Mhm.
right? To move us back toward that.
Mhm.
And if that can somehow be transmitted or come across, then that's the highest for me, right? That's the highest intention.
What can the students expect? Will there be poses? Is there actual practice, or is this for the head? Is it cerebral?
Right, right. We won't do actual on the mat practice, but we will do some things from chair. There will be somatic movement, right? We will do some chair work. We'll do some breath exercises, right? I'll teach a few of the tools, right? Like the find the middle tool. I always love that. I use that one every day, 10,000 times a day, right? Find the middle, right? Find the middle. So it's just such a useful tool that I love teaching it. And we'll introduce several of the tools like that. But we won't actually have an on the mat practice, a Y12SR actual practice, just because of the time frame that we're working with in that. But I'll give people resources. There'll be resources, right? Where if you choose to and ever want to, there are a ton of Y12SR meetings online now. And now that it seems to be, pandemic seems to be waning, then a lot of them are coming up, and they're across cities, really all across the world. And so now you can get them live again and in person. So I'll give people, if they're interested in that, resources and suggestions for books and all other kinds of things relative to this work.
I just think that this workshop is, it has the makings of something so rich and life-changing. I just feel, even in having the opportunity to be introduced to you and to talk to you, I can feel a shift here. So, so yeah, I just can't thank you enough for coming onto the platform to teach. I know that you did a conversation and a Chit Heads interview with our founder and CEO, Jacob.
That was a while back.
That was a while back. And
yeah.
So to be able to renew that conversation, expand it, and for you to actually be able to teach is just on the platform. It's an honor for us to have you as part of the work that we try to do here. So I'll just say that anyone who is interested, for those of you who are watching this, you can sign up for the workshop with Nikki Myers. You simply go to enroll.embodiedphilosophy.com/healing-addiction. And we will be talking about, in that workshop, healing addiction from a yogic perspective. And I just have to say to you, thank you so much for being committed to finding your middle, and offering it to people who don't even know that they need it. It's not just for, because typically the ones who need it we don't think we do. So the fact that it is available, and that we can reach recovery in different ways, 12 steps have been powerful in my life. It is time to get into the body, and this as a portal to the body, specifically on whatever my named, I could probably fit the EIEIO if I really said, but whatever I know that I'm searching for on the outside, that I can come here and a practice like yoga with its traditions and the sutras can have meaning. So thank you so much.
So I'm so looking forward to this. I'm just so looking forward to it, right? And I love the point you made. This work for me takes that stigma out, right? It takes the stigma away. And one of the big pieces for really healing addiction is to remove the stigma, because we all got a piece of this, and we got a culture that sets it up, right? We got a culture, Amazon, right? It sets all of that stuff, sets it up. So how do we heal in this? How do we keep moving toward healing, even as we live in it, right? It's that, I think I heard it first from the Bible, right? We're in it, but we don't have to be of it, right? And I think that's what yoga gives us a platform for. We're in this, but we don't have to be of it. right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to talk about. And I cannot wait. And again, I'm so pleased to be on this platform, to be on Embodied Philosophy. I honor the work that's done there. I know some of the teachers that are on that platform, and it's the real deal. And so, and so I'm so looking forward to being a part of it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation.
I love
And
it.
many more. I might get on that mat. I
I
might get.
love it. I love it. I'm going to encourage you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Well, you take care, Nikki, and we will see you very soon
Perfect.
at Philosophy. Okay. Peace and love.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.